Hey, what's up? I'm Terrence M, and today I want to talk to you guys about Spire's fourth character, the Watcher, who is releasing today to the main branch January 14th. The Watcher is a blind ascetic who has come to evaluate the Spire, and she's a master of the divine stances. Her starter relic is Pure Water. At the start of each combat, add a miracle into your hand. Miracle is a zero cost skill that just says gain 1 energy and it exhausts. So let's get more into the Watcher and her stances. But before we do that, let me explain a little more about who I am and why you should even care or listen to my opinion or whatever. But I've done very well during this beta period of the Watcher. As far as I know, I have some of the best stats with her. So yeah, let me just pull those up really quickly for you guys. This is my spreadsheet that I have, just recording of all of the runs that I did on the Watcher and whatever floor I reached. All of the purple is heart kills on Ascension 20, and then all of the yellow highlights are just when I reached Act 4 but didn't make it all the way to defeating the heart. My overall win rate is 48 and 91. I forgot to update this one here. And on average I reached floor 45 over all the runs total. I did start at Ascension 20. I didn't do the grind from A0 all the way up to A20. I played like 1 or 2 games like of Ascension 1 then 2 or something, but got a little bored pretty quickly and just went straight up to Ascension 20 like I have on all the other characters. The furthest point that I do have a 50% win rate on is up to 76 games of 139 now. And then over the last 20, I have a 50%. Over the last 30, I have 50% as well. Zoom in a little bit more for you guys. But yeah, I've done very well and very consistently with the Watcher. Even during this period, I had a 7-win streak on Ascension 20. And during this period, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 runs in a row where I made it to at least Act 4. All the runs that died were at Spire, Shield, and Spear. That fight can be really, really hard, but I do very well on the Watcher, and quite often, and at the halfway point. It's like such a big difference from when I first started playing her to having almost 150 runs on her, going from 13 and 56 with a 19% win rate to 35 with a 50% win rate. And the average floor is not too much of a difference, but that is a really big gap in win rate. So yeah, I feel like I have a lot that I could share with you guys about the Watcher, and let's get into what she actually does instead of talking all about me. So the main thing that Watcher does, and like the main focus for her, is stances. First stance is Wrath, and the stance you deal and receive double attack damage. During the early game, this is kind of what things revolve around. It's the main way that you deal damage in end fights. And her other main stance is Calm. Upon exiting the stance, gain 2 energy. Calm usually is just a good way to get out of Wrath when you don't end fights. On the turn that you enter Wrath, having a way to get out of Wrath is very nice. Receiving double damage is not something you want to be doing often unless you're blocking a whole lot. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of the cards. I have all the cards grouped and just certain categories and things like that, but it would take forever to go through all of the cards, and you guys can kind of just go through the compendium whenever she does go live. But I'm going to go through some of the main ones that I think like fit very well whenever you want to just have something that focuses around stances and things that fit well within that. So your starter card, Eruption, deal 9 damage into Wrath, and it upgrades to 1 energy. Pretty straightforward. It's the main way you're dealing damage for quite a while. there comes a time where you are going to want more Wrath and just more ways to deal the burst damage. He's a very bursty class because just by the nature of Wrath, you're receiving double attack damage, so you really do want to be trying to end fights while you're dealing double damage and receiving double damage. So really nice and consistent way I find to enter Wrath consistently without having to commit too many cards to it is Tantrum. 1 energy attack, deal 3 damage 3 times, enter Wrath, shuffle this card into your draw pile. So every time you play it, it goes straight back into your deck. So you never really run out of Wrath as long as you have a little bit of draw and things like that. And it does upgrade to deal 3 damage 4 times, so it does a little more damage on the upgrade and a couple more multi-hits. Scales well with like strength, and a later card we'll talk about, Talk to the Hand. This is a very consistent way to enter Wrath, and it's in Wrath focus build, it's very, very core and key to the deck. Crescendo is another kind of okay way. It's retain, which means it doesn't discard at the end of your turn, so you can enter Wrath whenever you need to. The other is Indignation and Simmering Fury. I don't pick as often, but they are nice to have just whenever you need more ways to enter Wrath and you haven't found like a Tantrum or something yet. There are 2 Wrath support cards. Halt, 0 energy block, gain 3 block, and when you're in Wrath you gain 7 additional block. This does double scale with Dexterity, so whenever you have like some Dexterity relics or whatever, like maybe a Kunai, Halt does gain a lot of value, as this number will get increased by the 3 will get increased, as well as the 7 will get increased by the Dexterity, so it can be a lot of block. And the other one is Rushdown. Whenever you enter Wrath, draw 2 cards. Having draw when you have a Wrath focused build is very nice, as you don't want to end up getting stuck in Wrath, as well as it can help you draw the damage you need to end the fight. Okay, then there's some calm cards. The starter calm card that you get is Vigilance, 2 energy, gain 8 block, enter calm, upgrades to 12 block. It's not that often of an upgrade, but it does happen sometimes. And it's just like a very basic calm card. One of my favorite calm cards is Meditate, put a card from your discard pile into your hand and retain it, enter calm, end your turn. And it does upgrade to put a second card from your discard pile into your hand. So it's a really nice way to either get back like Wrath and a big damage card, or Wrath and a way to exit Wrath. So you just like push a little bit of damage and you're guaranteed your exit, as well as it gives you some more energy to start your turn as well, since it is a calm card. This is very, very nice. And then Fear No Evil is a very basic calm card. It's an attack that'll let you enter calm. Pretty nice. Inner Peace is just another pretty basic calm card. Tranquility is a retain calm card, very similar to Crescendo, pretty much the same exact thing, but calm. That I don't find to be that useful. Inner Peace is nice when you need more calm. And Like Water is kind of like a payoff card for calm. At the end of your turn, if you're in calm, gain 5 block and it upgrades to 7. This can be nice to give you a lot of passive block in decks where you either have a lot of calm or you don't need to change stances that frequently. You can stay in calm and get a bunch of nice passive block you don't have to spend energy on. Then there's the empty cards. Empty Fist, deal, it's 9 damage now, exit your stance. Empty Body is gain block, exit your stance. And Empty Mind is draw 2, exit your stance, and upgrade to draw 3. Both Empty Fist and Empty Body are very, very nice to have in Act 1, especially when you're first learning the character. Being stuck in Wrath is a very, very bad thing. Taking double damage, like, I'm gonna repeat it a lot, you just don't... You want to be ending fights or exiting Wrath, or just be able to block an absurd amount. So making sure that you have consistency and being able and like having the option to exit is really nice, and you don't really have the extra energy as often for the Empty Mind, and a lot of the calm cards are rare and uncommon, whereas you have like a little more access to, well, that's not even that true. I don't know, I feel like I don't see calm cards as much though. But yeah, there's the same amount and about the same rarity, but yeah, doesn't really matter. But also in Act 1 you don't really have as much energy, so you look towards Empty Mind later, but it's very key in my opinion to get an early like Empty Fist or Empty Body to make sure that for longer fights you can be able to exit Wrath. Then there's the two kind of payoff cards for stances overall. There's Mental Fortress. Whenever you change stances, gain 4 block and upgrades to 6. You can change stances a lot in a turn, so that does end up going pretty well. That's my camera. And then the other one is Flurry of Blows. Deal 4 damage, upgrades to 6 for 0. And whenever you change stances, return this card from the discard pile to your hand. So like I said, just like with Mental Fortress, you can change stances a bunch in one turn and get a lot of damage in with this. As well as, just like Mental Fortress, you can get a lot of block with it with a card called Talk to the Hand, which we will cover a little bit later. That pretty much covers her stances. And there's one more stance actually, it's Divinity. Upon entering a stance, you gain 3 energy, attacks deal triple damage, and you exit the stance at the start of your turn. And there's Mantra, which is when you obtain 10 Mantra, enter Divinity. Mantra is the main way you get to enter Divinity, and the two main cards for that are Devotion and Worship. Worship gives you Mantra in increments of 5, so it's really nice, just like 2 worships and you're good to go. Devotion is a rare power at the start of your turn, gain 2 Mantra, upgrades to 3. This is a very, very consistent way to get Mantra. It goes from a 5 turn clock to a 4 turn clock just by itself, and then kind of with any help at all it becomes very good. Prostrate and Pray both give Mantra in small increments, so they don't work as well by themselves. Pray does upgrade to 4, so just like 2 turns of Devotion would work very nicely with the Pray. The other way to enter Divinity is Blasphemy. You enter Divinity, die next turn, exhaust. So this is something where you really, really like how in Wrath you wanted to end the fight. Usually whenever you're just trying to like end the fight or exit it. With Blasphemy you only have the option of ending the fight. So and this is the die next turn part. It's not a debuff or anything. It can't be cleansed with pellets. Can't be cleansed with like in the Ancient Pod or something like that. You have to kill next turn. Or there is whatever buff you get from Apparitions. I can't even remember the name of it right now. And as well as a buffer from like Fossilized Helix or something that will save you, because I believe it's coded to deal like 9,999 damage to you, not set you to 0. And then there's the big payoff card for Divinity and Mantra, as well as just like every attack is a big payoff card. But Brilliance, it deals 10 damage and deals additional damage equal to Mantra gain this combat. So by the first time you would hit Divinity, it would gain at least 10 more. So that's a 1 energy attack that's dealing 60, which is a really nice big chunk. And as the fight goes longer, it just gets even more ridiculous, going up to like 90 and then even more if you're able to hit Divinity for a 3rd time and the enemy is still alive somehow. I think one of the other like very core parts of the Watcher is the Retain cards. Retain cards are not discarded at the end of the turn. So how I said, like, she's a very bursty class and you're trying to end fights, especially with things like Blasphemy and Wrath, and you kind of just want to have guaranteed damage. And retain attacks are a very core part of the Watcher, and a good way to do that. Battle Hymn and Carve Reality, both these cards create smites. Battle Hymn is at the start of each turn, add a smite into your hand, and it upgrades to being innate, which is very important. It gives you consistent damage like throughout the whole fight, and it's something that's guaranteed on 1, and you'll have the smites waiting for you. Smite is just a 1 energy, deal 12 damage, exhaust attack. It's very, very nice to have. Usually when you have Battle Hymn, you don't really need other retaining cards. Retain attacks at least. You almost always want retain block. And then there's like a big one, Sands of Time. Deal 20, upgrades to 26 when retain low is cost by 1 this combat. This can get a little weak if you draw it late in the fight, because it just might cost too much at the time where you want to try and like burst and end the fight, and then you'll have to wait a lot longer. And Windmill Strike kind of has the same weaknesses as Sands of Time. It's a retain, deal 7, upgrade to 10 damage. When retained, increases damage by 4, and that upgrades to 5. So Windmill Strike has the same weakness of being drawn late and not really doing as much for a while. There's like 10, 15, 20, 25. That's already 4 turns to get up to like where Sands of Time is when upgraded. So when drawn late, it can be very, very detrimental and take a long time for it to get to like the amount of damage you want it to get to. Although it is very nice in fights like the champ, for example, where it can just scale for you. And that fight's not really bad outside of you just have to burst him once you get it to half. So Windmill Strike is perfect for that kind of fight. Then there's Reach Heaven, deal 8 damage, shuffle through violence into your draw pile. It's a 0 cost, 20 damage attack. That's pretty nice. Reach Heaven does cost a little bit, so you have to like pay 2 energy to get the Reach Heaven in. Then you still have to like draw the card that you're retaining, but it's not too bad. And Flying Sleeves is very similar to Smite. It's 4 damage twice, upgrade to 6. So it's very similar, although it does scale a little better with strength. And then these are the 3 retain, well, 4. Well, there's 3 retain blocks and then 1 that creates the safety. But yeah, just having guaranteed block, just protect perseverance, deceive reality, safety, having block that you can use whenever you need it and always be able to block is really nice. Then there is the retain support card establishment. Whenever a card is retained, reduce its cost by 1 this combat. Retain is a very, very core part of what Watcher does. It synergizes with the bursty aspects of her very well. Another thing that's pretty somewhat unique to her is Scry. Look at the top X cards of your draw pile. You may discard any of them. My favorite card for sure is Cut Through Fate. It's just very, very versatile. It fits in almost any strategy that you could want to do. With Divinity and Mantra, you gain all that extra energy. This is an attack that can get you to more attacks and things like that. Draws a card to deal with your energy and stuff. Very, very nice. Foresight, it scries at the start of every turn, so it works with these 2 cards that synergize whenever you scry. This gets you an attack back, this gets you some block. Very, very nice and consistent. Upgrades the consistency of your deck by a lot, going through an extra 3 cards every turn. Third Eye is not as flashy, but it scries 3 and upgrades to 5, which again, like going through 5 extra cards in your deck can be very important. And Just Lucky is generally pretty underwhelming. Scry 1, gain 2 block, deal 3, and all these numbers get upgraded by 1 when you upgrade it. Not really much to say about that. But Cut Through Fate is an extremely, extremely versatile card and very, very nice to have. Then we'll like just quickly look at the ways that she deals damage. Like Crush Joints is something that's like very often picked in Act 1. Don't be afraid to like upgrade this instead of your Eruption. A lot of times you can get by with just like the Miracle. One thing I did forget to mention is that normally when I play Watcher and all of those like 100 and whatever runs that I have never done the boss swap, all of that without ever really picking that option, mostly because I value streaking and things like that and don't like the sort of auto loss aspect of some of the lower rolls, but also because Miracle is just strong and allows you to do upgrades and things like Crush Joint to get a second turn of vulnerable, where you don't really need the upgrade on Eruption that early. Miracle is generally enough energy to let you get the damage in that you need to end fights in Act 1. And then these are a couple of attack cards for the Watcher. Generally, these aren't even really that core. Generally, it is the retain cards because you just have control over when you're using them and you're able to use them with your burst turn. But a card I really do like a lot and did underestimate a lot at first, I was like, This is just deal 7 damage for each enemy in combat. On one enemy fights, it's just a strike basically, so I didn't really like it at first. But in AoE fights, there's usually just like a primary target that you want to burst down really quickly. And Bowling Bash does an amazing job on this. There's just so many fights where this does well. Awaken One, Bronze Automaton, Collector, Slavers, Gremlin Leader, just on and on. Reptomancer, not Venomancer, I make that mistake a lot. It's just really, really good. And Conclude is her like other main AoE card. Deal 12 damage, upgrades to 16. It does end your turn, so it can be a little awkward to use with Wrath. And then Consecrates her other Consecrates her other AoE card. It's okay. I don't pick it that often. I'd much rather have a Conclude or a Bowling Bash, but it's nice to have another option if you know you have an AoE fight coming up. And then Mitigation. Figuring out how I'm supposed to like block for the heart, and like on Ascension 20, heart's doing like 67 damage to you on turn 2 or 3 quite often, so figuring out the mitigation was a pretty big step in like doing well consistently in A20. But a Spirit Shield is very nice. It's pretty unconditional. Gain 3 block, upgrades to 4 for each card in your hand. This gets up to a lot. It can get to like 9, can get to 36, since you do normally focus on a couple of retained cards, so you have pretty big hand. Talk to the hand, going back to Flurry of Blows and even Weave attacks that you can, 0-cost attacks you can play multiple cards multiple times in a turn. Whenever you attack an enemy, you gain 2 block and upgrades to 3. You can gain like such a ridiculous amount of block from that. From multi-hit attacks like Tantrum and Ragnarok, and then the 0-cost attacks. It's a very, very nice and consistent way of blocking, and I like Talk to the Hand a lot. Definitely one of my favorite Watcher cards. Wave of the Hand is one of the strongest cards. Whenever you gain block this turn, apply 1 weak to all enemies and upgrades to 2 weak. That can, just like one play of this can provide a weak for the whole fight really, and it lasts for a while. It's just really, really good. The only other way she has to apply weak is Sash Whip. It's a deal 8 to 10 damage and apply 2 weak if the last card played was an attack. Usually when you have Wave of the Hand, it's way more than enough weak than you'll ever need, but Sash Whip is pretty okay early. Wallop is deal 9 damage, upgrades to 12, and you gain block equal to the unblocked damage dealt. Wallop can get to be like a really, really big way of blocking. I remember a run where I had like 3 Wallops and a Shuriken and then a Necronomicon, and that run got out of control very, very quickly. I was blocking for such ridiculous amounts, as well as it being doubled by Wrath or being tripled by Divinity leads to tons of block. These are the 4 main ways to, well, these 3 are the main ways to get tons of block, and just Wave of the Hand applying weak for so many turns is a big factor in like just having consistency and how much you're blocking, as well as going back to the retained cards. Protects blocking for 12 to 16 and something that you can keep in your hand for when you need it. And Safety is blocking for 12. Perseverance is blocking for 5 to 7, and it's going up by 3 every turn. Those are your main ways to get like a decent amount of block and mitigation. And then there's just a couple of cards left over. There's kind of like some subsets, like these cards mostly deal with energy. These 2 upgrade, these draw. And then the rest of these all kind of do their own thing. 2 of my favorites and most used of these, of like the subset of energy, would be Fasting, is gain 3 strength, gain 3 dexterity, and lose a energy, gain 1 less energy at the start of each turn. And Day of Reform, which is at the start of your turn, gain energy and increases gain by 1. So form just gives you like gradually just infinite amount of energy and will like negate the downside of fasting. It's very good with Sneeko, of course, like all three cost cards are, and just gives you a bunch of energy. Really, really nice. Lesson learned, deal 10 damage if fatal, upgrade a random card in your deck. This can lead to your whole deck being upgraded when you get it early. I think like Act 1 or by the middle of Act 2 is a really nice spot for it. Scroll is very powerful draw. Draw cards into your hand is full. And it upgrades to 0 cost. Study is a very consistent draw. At the end of your turn, shuffle an insight into your draw pile. Insight is a 0 cost skill that retains and is draw 2, which can lead to very, very consistent decks. Pressure points and then alpha. These are two very different ways of playing the Watcher. Pressure points is apply a mark, which on upgrade does 8 and upgrade does 11, and all enemies lose HP equal to their mark. It's just a way to do like consistent damage, but it doesn't really gain benefit from Divinity or Wrath, which is something you're building around a lot. So I don't use it as often, but there is a time and a place for it. And then alpha is shuffle beta into your draw pile, which is a 2 cost skill, which shuffles omega into your draw pile, which is a 3 cost power, which does 50 damage at the end of every turn. That's a really big payoff, and it's 50 AoE damage. So yeah, that can deal a ton of damage if you're able to like stall and go through your deck fast enough and have the energy to get the omega into play. Another amazing Watcher card is Volt. Skip the next enemy turn, end your turn, exhaust. Just taking another turn is really, really nice. Another like cool and fun card is Omniscient. Choose a card in your draw pile, play the chosen card twice, and exhaust it. Doing this on Talk to the Hand gets you tons of block as well as powers and things like that is really nice, and can help you scale very, very nicely. That goes through pretty much all of her cards and her core concepts and stuff. Just gonna take a quick minute to give just a couple of tips in Act 1. Just the game gets very situational, and you just gotta work with what you've got and whatever relics you've managed to accumulate or whatever else. But the biggest tip I can give is that Watcher is insanely powerful in Act 1. I think her like strongest thing that she gets in Act 1, is battle. Whoops. Is battle him. At the start of each turn, add a smite into your hand. Having that 12 damage retain at the start of each turn makes your damage so consistent, and with the eruption you're dealing so much damage compared to how much health things have in Act 1, where you're just consistently able to end fights very quickly before taking much damage. So Watcher is very good at taking elites in Act 1, and once you do get like accustomed to her and like how she deals with enemies, I would very much suggest having elites being the main focus of your pathing, more so than all the other characters. She's a lot stronger and can take them. And there's Cut Through Fate. Cut Through Fate is just so flexible. It works in pretty much anything you can be doing with the Watcher. There's nothing really that's bad. It loses a little bit with like Sneeko and Runic Pyramid sometimes, depending on the deck, but it fits in almost everything. So I take it pretty much any time I see it. It fits, and it's just really, really flexible. I really can't stress enough how important it is to get your first... I probably should fix that and lock it. It's really important to get your first empty card. Being stuck in Wrath in Act 1 will lead to you just being like, oh, I lost this fight because of draw order and I wasn't able to exit Wrath, so now I take double damage and now I'm gonna lose a bunch of health and like can't take as many elites, or I might die to this hallway fight or whatever. Getting your first empty card is something that I do prioritize a lot. I think Empty Fist and Empty Body are great pickups early on. whatever, just leave that big. Bowling Bash, deal 7 damage for each enemy in combat. This is very, very nice AoE. I did mention before that I did underrate it a lot, but this is definitely one of my favorite cards, and I take one of it in almost every run. Great against sentries and great against so many fights down the line. Definitely try out Bowling Bash. Conclude, I mean, 16 damage AoE, good. Not really much to say about that. Vulnerable does turn wrath damage into 3 times, which is very, very nice. It's like having build your own divinity and just burst your way out of fights. It's great. She can do ridiculous amounts of damage, and a wall up in like the same sense, just blocking for 18/24 can maybe let you stay in wrath for a turn and be able to dish out more damage. I think that's it for this. Didn't want to get too into things. I want to give you guys some time to experience the Watcher for yourself, get some of your own opinions on the cards and things like that. I may do something more in depth and more in depth with our run or something like that. But I'll definitely upload some of my Watcher runs this week to give you guys some examples. You can always stop by my stream at twitch.tv/TerrenceMHS to ask any questions or any tips or something like that I didn't cover in this video. But thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. Later.